We've got 6 different stories to cover from several different outlets. It is time for another episode of the World Newsround. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with another premiere video of the World's Newsround, where I cover various different news stories from outside the UK. We have 6 stories here to cover, but just before I give you descriptions of what they are, the date and time of this recording is 11:23 a.m. on Saturday, the 16th of November 2024, for reference, guys. So these are the stories we're going to be covering here. From the Association Press, that Trump's Pentagon pick has been flagged by fellow service members as a possible insider threat. Well, then we'll be looking at an article from Rhetoric about Muslims who voted for Donald Trump, upset by his pro-Israel cabinet picks. Then this one here from Africa News. French weapon systems have been found in Sudan is likely a violation of UN's arms embargo, says Amnesty International. Interesting one there. Another one will be from Al Jazeera, with protesters are storming the parliament in a breakaway Georgian region of Abkhazia. I'm going to mispronounce the name, but it looks like a part of Georgia may try to break away from the country. Very pro-Russian. Very interesting scenario there. We'll also be looking at an exclusive from Bloomberg about Vladimir Putin and the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz holding a first direct call in almost 2 years as well. And then finally, we will end from a piece from Open Democracy on EU migration strategy to treat the migrants like mafia. Very interesting stories, to say the least. And we'll also have 2 funny videos in between to break the ice. So let's get started with the Association Press, guys. This one here, Trump Pentagon pick has been flagged by fellow service members as a possible insider threat. Already, for those who have been following closely, since Trump won the election, he's already started picking out his cabinet already. And you can see some of the people who are being picked as very, very concerning, to say the least. And this is another one here about, especially when there's somebody who have close connections to Russia or consider themselves pro-Russian, could really do undermine the very fabrication of systems that America has in place. This will be the first time that really, America's institution will really be under threat here. And it's whether or not how many Republicans in the Senate will stand by and allow it to happen. How much are Republicans going to allow America to be dismantled as much as it possibly can? And, the average American, who are expecting their lives to be better by Trump's actions, by things that he might do, well, they're going to find out over the next couple of years how worse off they're going to be. They're going to learn the hard way. And they will suffer. They will suffer, unfortunately, as a result of it. But it's not a good sign at all, guys. It's really, really not. Let's read into this person then. So Pete Hegseth, the Army's National Guard veteran and Fox News host, has been nominated by Donald Trump to lead the Department of Defense. So you can already see the warning signs already. It was flagged as a possible insider threat by fellow service members due to a tattoo on his bicep that associated with white supremacist groups. So they're going to have somebody to lead the Department of Defense who has associations with a white supremacist group. That's really scary. Hegseth, who has downplayed the role of military members and veterans for the January 6, 2021 attack, and rallied against the Pentagon's subsequent efforts to address extremism in its ranks, has said he was pulled by his District of Columbia National Guard unit from guarding Joe Biden's January 2021 inauguration. He said he was unfairly identified as an extremist due to a tattoo on his chest. This week, however, a fellow Guard member who was the unit security manager and on an anti-terrorism team at the time, shared with the Association Press an email he had been sent to the unit's leadership flagging a different tattoo reading "Dus Vols" that has been used by white supremacists concerned it was an indication of an insider threat. So those who obviously work in the Department of Defense who are of different color are likely to be treated indifferently, very much there, very, very indifferently. So this is the email they have here. Link for this will be in the description if you want to have a read of it. But that is the email they sent. They've redacted, obviously, some of it there, understandably so. If Heisek assumes office, it would mean someone who has said it's a sham, that extremism is a problem in the military, and would oversee a sprawling department whose leadership reacted with alarm when people in tactical gear stormed up the US Capitol steps on January 6 in military-style stacked unit formation. He's also shown support for members of the military accused of war crime and criticised the military justice system. So this could also be a dismantling of parts of the military as well, and the way they deal with people who of discrimination within the military force as well. So it could amplify and rather than play it down within the military as well. Heisek and the Trump's transition team did not respond to email seeking comment. As the AP reported, an investigation published last month, more than 480 people with a military background were accused of ideologically driven extremist crimes from 2017 through 2023, including more than 230 arrests in connection with the January 6th insurrection. According to data collected and analysed by the National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism, or START, at the University of Maryland, though those numbers reflect a small fraction of those who have served honourably in the military, and Lloyd Austin, the current Defence Secretary, has said that extremism is not widespread in the US military. AP's investigation found that pilots involving people with military backgrounds were more likely to involve mass casualties. Since January the 6th, Heisek, like many Trump supporters, has minimised both the riot's seriousness and the roles of people with military training. Amid the widespread condemnation for the day after the assault, Heisek took a different approach on a panel on Fox News. Heisek portrayed the crowd as patriots, saying that they loved freedom and they were people who love our country, who had been reawoken to the reality of what the left has done to their country. Of the 14 people convicted in the Capitol attack of Sedition conspiracy, the most serious charges resulted from January 6. 8 previously served in the military, while the majority of those with military background arrested after January 6 were no longer serving. More than 20 were in the military at the time of the attack, according to START. Heisek wrote in his book, The War on Warriors, published earlier this year, that just a few or a handful of active duty soldiers and reservists had been at the Capitol that day. He did not address the hundreds of military veterans who were arrested and charged. Heisek has argued the Pentagon overreacted by taking steps to address extremism and has taken leadership to task for the military's efforts to remove people who it deems white supremacists and violent extremists from the ranks. Heisek has written that the problem is fake and manufactured and characterized it as peddling the lie of racism in the military. He said efforts to root extremism out has pushed rank-and-file patriots out of their formations. America is less safe and our generals simply do not care about the oath that they are sworn to uphold. The generals are too busy addressing how domestic extremists wearing Carter hat jackets and will usurp our democracy with gate barriers or flagpoles, he wrote in The War on Warriors. And in a segment on Fox News last year about Jacob Chasley, the Navy veteran known as the QAnon shaman. Yeah, because QAnon obviously tells you the truth, guys. Who walked through the Capitol while wearing a horned fur hat. Heisek played a misleading video clip from his then colleague Tucker Carlson that sought to portray Chasley as a passive sightseer. In fact, Chasley was among the first rioters to enter the building and plead guilty to a felony charge for obstructing an official proceeding in 2021. Chasley acknowledged using a bullhorn to rile up the mob, offering thanks in a prayer while in the Senate chamber for having the chance to get rid of traitors, and writing a threatening note to Vice President Mike Pence saying, "It's only a matter of time, justice is coming." In the message on Facebook, Heisek posted with the exertion of the video he wrote, "In the way Chasley had been treated by the justice system is disgusting. Trump, Chasley, and many more, the left want us all locked up," Heisek wrote. Well, you guys broke the law, and you said derogatory and broke the law, so yes, you should all be locked up, really. Heisek served... No, we're good, thank you. Heisek served for almost 20 years and deployed in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Guantanamo Bay. He has 2 Bronze Stars in speaking about his service and advocating for other service members and veterans. He has taken action to support convicted war criminals and recently said he had told his platoon that he could ignore directives limiting when they can shoot. In a podcast interview released earlier this month, Heisek described getting a briefing from a military lawyer in 2005 in Baghdad on the rules of engagement. Heisek said the lawyer told him he could not shoot someone carrying a rocket-propelled grenade unless it was pointed at him. I remember walking out of the briefing, pulling my platoon together and being like, guys, we're not doing that, you know. If you see an enemy and they know, you know, engage before he's able to point the weapon at you and shoot. We're going to have your back, Heislik said. All they do is take one incident and yell war criminal, he said. Referring to the New York Times, the left and the Democrats, adding, why wouldn't we back up these guys even if they weren't perfect? I can't speak about military engagement, to be fair. So it's not, no. I don't claim that everyone who gets it, no American soldier gets it right in combat. But I don't get this premise that one incident and everyone's committed a war criminal. It's understanding and knowing the rules of engagement. He said he was proud of his role in securing pardons from Trump in 2019 for a former US Army commando set to stand trial for the killing of a suspected Afghan bomb maker, as well as a former Army lieutenant convicted of murder for ordering his men to fire upon 3 Afghans, killing 2 at Heislik urging. Trump also ordered a promotion for Eddie Gallagher, a Navy SEAL convicted of posing with a dead Islamic State captive in Iraq. Isaac has complained that he himself was labelled an extremist by the DC National Guard and said he was prevented from serving during the Biden inauguration, a few weeks after the January 6th Capitol attack because of a cross tattoo on his chest. He said he decided to end his military service shortly after that in disgust. But a fellow Guard member who was working as a security officer ahead of the inauguration gave AP an email he sent showed him raising concerns about a different tattoo. The retired Master Sergeant Derico Gavia, who was serving as a DC National Army Guard Physical Security Manager and on its anti-terrorism force protection team in January 2021, told the AP he had received an email from a former DC Guard member that included a screenshot of a social media post that included 2 photos showing several of Heislik's tattoos. Gavia had told AP he researched the tattoos, including one of Jerusalem Cross and the context of the word Dervus, Latin for God's wills it, on his bicep, and determined he had sufficient connections to extremist groups to elevate the email to his commanding officers. Several of Heislik's tattoos are associated with the expression of religious faiths. According to Heidi Burke of the Global Project Against Hate and Extremism, but they have also been adopted by some far-right groups and violent extremists. Their meaning depends on context, she said. The former Navy intelligence officer Travis Adkins was the person who initially saw the photo on a group chat, then researched them and decided to post the photos to social media. Those images were then seen by former members of the DC National Guard, who sent it in an anonymous email to Gavator. This is so outrageous. It's so outrageous what we're reading here. It was quite concerning to see that on the surface member's body, but even more concerning that it's a person who chose to bear those symbols is being nominated to lead the most powerful nuclear military in the world, Akis told AP in a phone interview on Friday. Some extremists invoke their association with the Christian Crusade to express anti-Muslim sentiment. The Global Project Against Hate and Extremism notes that in 2023, the words were in the notebooks of the Allen, Texas shooter Mauricio Garcia, and as Bolovics, a right-wing extremist who killed 77 people in 2011, had similar markings on his manifesto. In an email Governor sent on January the 14th, 2021, in which he provided to the Association Press, he raised concerns about Heislik, a major at the time, and mentioned only Dus Volk's tattoo in an email addressed to the then Major General William Walker, who was commanding general of the DC National Guard. Goffer raised concerns that the phrase was associated with white supremacists who invoked the idea of white Christian medieval past as well as Christian crusades. MC Walker served with information provided this falls in line with of insider threat, and this is what we as members of the US Army District of Columbia's National Guard said the anti-terrorism force protection team strive to prevent, Garcia wrote. I said you guys need to take a look at this, Garcia said in a phone interview with the AP on Thursday. I later received an email that he was told to stay away. He was told to turn a blind eye to it. Biden's inauguration took place just 2 weeks after the insurrection, and the army was taking no chances. More than 25,000 Guard members were pouring into the city, and each was going through additional vetting, depending on how close they were going to be to Biden. A total of 12 National Guard members were told to stay home. Former Pentagon Press Secretary Jonathan Hoffman told reporters in a briefing a day before the inauguration. At least 2 were flagged due to potential extremism concerns. The rest were due to other background checks that were identified as concerning by either the Army, FBI, or Secret Service. It was not clear whether Heysel was among the 12 Hoffman referenced at the time. Heysel is also speculated in podcast interviews that he was asked to stand down because of his political views, his role as a journalist covering January 6th, or because he works for Fox News. Yeah, your history kind of really does speak for itself. That's really does speak for itself. This guy, Heydrich is bad. Pete Heysel. I can't get his name right. Pete Heysel. Yeah, Pete's going to be catastrophic for the defense, for the military. He's going to be absolutely catastrophic. It's very, very scary. This very, very scary considering his connections that he has. But we all knew that when Trump won, that he would be putting in all of his people. He would be putting in people like him, and I said that even though Donald Trump is going to be really dangerous, it's the people around him who are going to be even more dangerous. And it's going to be a real dismantling of the United States. It's going to be real dismantling. And people are going to feel it. And those who have been part of the foundations of the institutions of the United States, many of them will feel threatened. Many of them will feel pushed. Many of them will be forced to either toe the line or get kicked to the curb. And that's basically what it's going to be. You know, the very institutions and fabrications that the United States has is going to crack. Yeah, I feel within the 2 years before the midterm elections. And yeah, it's a very troubling time ahead. That is for sure for the military. Another group of peoples whose time is not good for on their side is Muslims in the US. This one is from Reuters. Muslims who voted for Trump are upset by his pro-Israel cabinet picks. Now, I've got to say, guys, honestly, I really, really don't understand, considering some of the things that he has blatantly said, Donald Trump has blatantly said, considering that he imposed a ban on Muslims when he first went in, how they could still vote for him. Just think about that. Let that sink in just for a minute, guys. Yeah. This man tried to impose a ban on stopping all Muslims coming in and out of America. Right at the get-go. Caused up a massive hornet's nest. You know. It was absolutely ridiculous. And he's going to do it. He's going to try something like that again. And these Muslims should be very, very concerned about their future, about their concern, about their well-being. They really, really should. Yes, the Democrats, in terms of what's happening in the Middle East, yes, Biden and Harris have not done enough in the Middle East. We know that. I've called it out. Other YouTubers have called it out. Other people have called out what they're doing has been too close to Netanyahu. But Trump is much closer. He's the guy that literally moved the embassy into Jerusalem. He moved the U.S. embassy into Jerusalem. Like, he literally did that. Like, the guy is going to be, he is more pro-Israel than Kamala Harris. More pro-Israel. And these guys are upset by his pro-Israel cabinet picks. What the hell were you expecting from Donald Trump? Did you honestly think Donald Trump was going to make it easier? Like, they really, like, for any Muslims who are listening to this in America, that thought Donald Trump would be in your interest. He has no interest whatsoever in Muslims. He has no interest whatsoever. He is more than happy to sit back and let Israel burn Gaza to the ground. He's more than happy to see the West Bank fall and all the Palestinians who live in the West Bank in Gaza either killed or pushed out of those areas so that Israel can take it all for themselves. He's more than happy for that. He is more than happy to sit by and let that happen. And if you didn't know that, then you really, really, even if you're someone who's not paying attention to politics, it's really not that hard to look up things that Donald Trump has said and done in the past. It really, really is not. So US Muslim leaders who supported Republican Donald Trump to protest against the Biden administration's support for Israel's war in Gaza and attacks on Lebanon have been deeply disappointed by his cabinet picks, they tell Reuters. Trump won because of us, and we're not happy with his Secretary of State picks and others, said Rabul Chowley, a Philadelphia investor who chaired the abandoned Harris campaign in Pennsylvania and co-founded Muslims for Trump. I shouldn't laugh. I really shouldn't laugh, guys. But I just have to say, like, you honestly think Trump cares about Muslims? You honestly have no idea. Honestly. Muslim support beliefs for Trump helped him win Michigan may have factored into other swing state strategists believe. Trump picked Republican Senator Marco Rubio, a staunch supporter of Israel, for the Secretary of State. Earlier this year, Rubio said he would not call for a ceasefire in Gaza and that he believed Israel should destroy every element of Hamas. These people are victim animals, he added. Trump also nominated Mike Huckleberry, a former Arkansas governor and staunch pro-Israel conservative who backs Israel's occupation of the West Bank, who has called for a two-state solution in Palestine unworkable, as the next ambassador to Israel. He has picked Republican Representative Eli Sturskevich, who calls the UN a cesspool of anti-Semitism for its condemnation of deaths in Gaza, to serve as US ambassador to the United Nations. Yeah, they don't want any kind of sympathy whatsoever for Palestinian people. The cabinet he's picking are so pro-Israel. They are more than happy to sit and watch them suffer in the Middle East. They will not condemn. You will not get any condemnation whatsoever in the genocide that is taking place there. You will not get that from Trump's administration. You won't get any of that. You really will not. Rexilio Nascarico, Executive Director of American Muslim Engagement and Empowerment Network, AMEN, said Muslim voters had hoped Trump would choose cabinet officials who work towards peace, and there was no sign of that. We are very disappointed, he said. I'm sorry, it just, like, I just don't understand how you guys could not see the warning signs. Like, I understand how you feel about Harris and the Democrats. I get that. But Trump was never going to make things easier. He was never going to make it easier for you guys. It seems like this administration has been packed entirely with neoconservatives and extremely pro-Israel, pro-war people, which is a failure on the side of President Trump, to the pro-peace and anti-war movement. Nakrio said the community would continue pressing to make its voices heard about ending the war in Gaza. At least we're on the map. How long are you going to be on the map for? I wouldn't say that. Hassan Abdul Salim, a former professor at the University of Minnesota, Twin City, and co-founder of the Abandon Harris campaign, which endorsed Green Party candidate Jill Stein, said Trump's staffing plans were not surprising, but had proven even more extreme than he had feared. It's like he's going to Zionist overdrive, he said. We were always extremely skeptical. Obviously, we're still waiting to see what the administration, where the administration will go, but it looks like our community has been played. Yeah, you have been played right to a fiddle here. The Trump campaign did not immediately respond to an email seeking comment. Several Muslim and Arab supporters of Trump said they had hoped Richard Greenfeld, Trump's former acting director of national intelligence, would play a key role after he had led months of outreach to Muslim and Arab American communities, and was even introduced as a potential next Secretary of State at events. Another key Trump ally, Moradi Bosco, the Lebanese father-in-law of Trump's daughter Tiffany, met repeatedly with Arab Americans and Muslim leaders. Both promised Arab American and Muslim voters that Trump was a candidate for peace and would act swiftly to end the wars in the Middle East and beyond. Neither was immediately reachable. Trump made several visits to cities with large Arab American and Muslim populations, including a stop in Dearborn, a majority Arab city, where he said he loved Muslims, and Pittsburgh, where he called Muslims for Trump a beautiful movement. They want peace, they want stability. Bill Brassey, mayor of neighboring Dibadon Heights, who endorsed Trump, said the president-elect 3 times and still believed he would work to end the war despite the cabinet appointments. Rodon Mackey, the Lebanese American Muslim vice chair for the outreach of the Michigan Republican Party, agreed. I don't think everyone's going to be happy with every appointment Trump makes, but the outcome is what matters, she says. I do not know that Trump wants peace, and what the people need to realize is that there's 50,000 dead Palestinians and 3,000 dead Lebanese, and that's happening during the current administration. I'm not holding much hope, but some of them are still holding on to this belief that perhaps he will do something. Maybe look, I will say this, because I know some people are critical of me of this, but look, I'll say this, okay? If he seriously gets a ceasefire, if he seriously secures a deal, if he seriously ensures a two-state solution or something here for the Palestinian people that doesn't involve them getting completely wiped off the face of the earth, then I will give Trump his credit. But do I expect that in any way, shape, or form? No, I do not. I do not expect it in any way, shape, or form. This is the guy, as I said, this is the guy that tried to ban Muslims in America. This guy is strong, has strong views on immigration. Like, these are people who are the most frustrating thing. And I have to say, this is almost pathetic. And it's almost pathetic. Yeah, because there are many Muslims out there who are not thick and know exactly what Donald Trump is, heard what he has said, seen what he has said, and know that this man will make things worse for those in the Middle East. I'm sorry to insult these people, but by God, I will take it all back if Donald Trump not only secures peace in the Middle East, but also guarantees a home for Palestinian people. But I do not hold my breath whatsoever for it. I really do not. Like, if things change in 6, 12, in a year's time, and we actually find out things are better, then great. But I'm not holding my breath on that. I like to expect a man who banned Muslims, who tried to ban Muslims in his own country, and you're expecting him to support Muslims in another country? Really not been paying attention to what the man has been saying. Really have not. All I can say is, if there's any message I have on there, I don't want to put fear or concern for Muslims in America, but if I have any advice for you living there, watch your back, because you will be a target now. If you're not already a target, you will be an even bigger target now. It's the message I have. Moving away from Donald Trump and the US, guys. An interesting one here regarding Sudan. This is from Africa News. So, French weapons systems were found in Sudan is likely a violation of UN arms embargo, says Amnesty International. Let's read a bit more into this before I give my thoughts. So, armoured vehicles manufactured by the UAE, that's the United Arab Emirates, and equipped with French defence systems have been captured by the Sudanese army during the civil war in Gaza. During the civil war in Sudan, Amnesty International says. The rights group said in a report on Thursday it had identified UAE-made armoured personnel carriers, APCs, in various parts of Sudan, including the Dhofar region, where they were used by paramilitary rapid support forces in its fight against Sudanese armed forces, SAF. Now, before I go any further, the UAE has consistently denied that they have had any involvement in this conflict whatsoever. That's what the United Emirates have consistently said. They have always strongly denied that they've been involved in this war. There's been a lot of accusations of the UAE supplying weapons and procurement to the rapid support forces, and they have denied it. Well, if the UAE has military equipment or personnel that has been made by the French, and they've passed that on to the RSF here, that can open up a very uncomfortable Pandora's box here of problems for the UAE. It added that the presence of the military vehicles on the battlefield will likely consist of violation of United Nations arms embargo that prohibits transfer of weapons to Sudan. The civil war broke out in April 2023 after simmering tensions between the RSF and the Sudanese army escalated to intense fighting across the North African country, where rampant human rights violations were committed. And more than 20,000 people have been killed in the conflict, according to the UN, while 11.6 million have been forcibly displaced, including 8.3 million people internally and 3.1 million people who have fled to neighbouring countries. Sudan's claim that the UAE has been supplying the RSF with weapons that prolong the 18-month war with the army have been denied by the UAE. Amnesty International said it had identified the presence of several Nemba Arbenz APCs on the ground after verifying pictures shared on social media showed the vehicles captured or destroyed by the Sudanese army. The vehicles were reportedly made in the UAE by Edge Group and equipped with Gallic reactive defensive systems, which is manufactured in France by Electros Defense and KNDS France, according to Amnesty report. France should be very concerned about this. The Gallic system is designed to protect vehicles from approaching threats by releasing projectile smokes and decoys, according to Lacrit's website. Our research shows that weaponry designed and manufactured in France is actively used in the battlefield in Sudan, said Agnes Kalamad, Amnesty International Secretary General. The Gallic system has been deployed by the RSF in this conflict, and any use in Darfur would be a clear breach of the UN's arms embargo, he said. The French government must ensure that Larocque's defense and KNDS France immediately stop the supply of this system to the UAE. In response to the Amnesty International report, Larocque in an email statement to the Associated Press that the company confirms it has supplied the Gallic system to the Emirate Armed Forces for the use of smokescreen countermeasures. These deliveries were made in strict compliance with the export licenses granted to Larocque and the association end-use certificate, the statement reads. Meanwhile, responding to Amnesty International, a spokesperson from the Emirate government said in an email statement that the UAE is the target of a coordinated disinformation campaign aimed at undermining our foreign policy, regional role, and humanitarian efforts. It is both outrageous and unacceptable that the SAF representatives continue to level accusations against the UAE, alleging our involvement in the ongoing conflict. The statement reads, adding that the UAE has been involved in humanitarian initiatives to help Sudanese people in this conflict. The UAE has said it has told the UN Security Council and international partners that he has not provided support or supplies to the RSF or any of the belligerent warring parties in Sudan. Last month, the United States sanctioned Anthony Agamo de la Musca, a senior RSF leader, and the brother of paramilitary commander Mohamed Amin Diago for leading efforts to supply weapons throughout the war. Angali controls the UAE base Treladive General Trading LLC, a front company that imports vehicles to Sudan on behalf of the paramilitary RSF and retrofitted them with machine guns. Here's the thing, right? So Amnesty International, they must have some, not just obviously reporting, but if they have some evidence that shows the French weapons. Okay, I would have liked to have heard from the French government. They may have put out a statement in response to it in another piece, maybe. But I will say this. If they have photo evidence showing these weapons and whatnot, and I'm sure they have, if they put that out there, same weapons that the French government have supplied to the UAE, then they need to stop this denialism, because then the evidence is very, very clear here. It is a violation of the UN arms embargo. And the UAE claiming that they are helping humanitarian aid. We've been hearing the whispers about them supporting the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces. I've been hearing about these stories. But there's been no real evidence. Now, if they've got some photographic evidence or maybe some video footage in Sudan showing that, on top of that, as long as they report, then the UAE have got no leg to stand on this. And the French government should be doing something as well. I hope they are responding to this report to the UAE in some way, shape, or fashion. I would like to think so, but I'm not sure. It is a very cause for concern. And the thing is that as long as weapons are being supplied to whichever side, it is prolonging this war. And it's wrong. It's wrong that this war has been prolonged because innocent people are suffering as a direct result of it as well, which is very, very frustrating, guys. So, guys, we're about halfway through World Newsround. I've got a funny video to break the ice a little bit. I hope you guys enjoyed this 2-minute video. It's one we've played back about a month ago, I think it was. But I hope you guys enjoy this one from Foil and Arms. Just to really go well off track from what we've been listening to, guys. The video is called How to Get People Back to the Cinema.
We've tried remakes, sequels, prequels, crossover. Nothing is working. We are dying here. We need to find a way to get the younger generation off their phones and back into the cinema.
What if we made the cinema screens vertical?
Look into the infrastructural costs.
Yeah, we could get the actors to film the movies themselves on their iPhones.
The union are going to kick up a fuss, but I like it.
What about instead of one movie that goes on for 3 hours?
Too long.
What about 180 60-second movies back to back?
Yes, I love it.
Vegan popcorn.
Vegan popcorn?
Isn't popcorn already vegan?
Make it more vegan and put up a sign.
We've had 2D, we've had 3D.
Yes?
Well, how about another Marvel movie?
I was hoping you'd say that.
But what if it's simpler than all that?
What do you mean?
What if we just change the titles?
Change the titles?
We have been looking into YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok in this regard.
We're just going to rename our movies.
Forget Shawshank Redemption.
That's confusing.
No one knows what a Shawshank is.
Yeah, instead, what about Innocent Man Escapes Prison? Shocking.
Yeah.
Or accountant, schools, police officer.
Okay.
Or my personal favourite, watch this guy crawl through 2 miles of human feces.
Sweet Lord.
What would you prefer to watch? Aquaman or...
Man holds his breath underwater for insane amount of time.
The second one.
Would you rather see Kill Bill or Absolute Karen just will not stop?
That one.
Oppenheimer becomes this nerdy scientist is crazy hot.
Way better.
And Saw becomes...
This one DIY trick will save your life.
Yes. Instead of Rocky 8, we should have Rocky v Creed Full Fight HD, link in description.
This is going to save us. While we're waiting for that to be actioned, I want you to increase the price of cinema tickets, increase the price of popcorn, and increase the amount of ads shown before the movies.
Yes, sir.
The young people are going to come running back.
Doomda.
Are they gonna come running back, guys? Are they gonna come running back to the cinema? Answers in the comments below, guys. Answers in the comments below. I just want to remind you before we go to the next story, if you haven't already, please hit the like button. It'd be greatly appreciated. Shares across social media so others are notified of this video. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing because it really does help support the channel. If you're watching through the premiere video, if you want to leave a super chat, you're more than welcome to do so. Or you can, other ways you can financially support me in the work that I do here is becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p. Gets you access to custom emojis of the gang behind me, such as Ollie the Octopus, Cash Dummy the Cookie Monster, Pingu the Penguin, the Lava Lamp, and more there. You get all those emojis that you can use whenever premiere videos are going off or live streams that are going on as well. Also, when you comment on any of my videos as a member, you'll get a response from me as well. It takes sometimes it'll take a couple of days, but I do get back around to responding as well. If you decide to become a $1.99 member, that's just an extra £1 more. You also, for that, you get early access to additional content. So do consider the membership levels, and thank you very much for anyone who has been a member, who is currently a member, or is renewing their membership. It is greatly appreciated. If you want to, you can also buy me a coffee as well. Links in that in the description, and join my Patreon as well. You can join the Patreon. You get exclusive content on that platform as well as exclusive content on Rumble. If you want to check out any of my social medias and find me in other places, as well as the Discord community, the free Discord community that many people are part of, all of them are in the links tree down below. If you click the links tree, it takes you to opens up to all my social media, so you can find everything that you're looking for on there. The next story I've got for you guys is a very fascinating one, to say the least. So I'm going to read out a bit of this before we can get our understanding, I suppose. So protesters stormed the parliament in a breakaway Georgian region of Abkhazia. Abkhazia? If I mispronounce the name, I'm going to mispronounce it, so I do apologize. So tensions have flared during the past week over a proposed deal that would allow Russians to buy property in Abkhazia. Very, very interesting. So a protest rally outside the parliament in Sudan, the capital of Georgia's breakaway region of Abkhazia. So this is very interesting. So let's read a bit more into this before I give my full. So protesters oppose a proposed measure that would allow Russians to buy property in the Georgian territory of Abkhazia, have stormed into the secessionist region's parliament building and clashed with the police. The parliament in the regional capital of Sudan was set to discuss ratifying the measures on Friday, but postponed the session as demonstrators gathered outside the gates of the government compound that includes the legislative building and the presidential office. Protesters used a truck to smash through the metal gates surrounded the parliament. Video from the scene appeared to show people climbing through windows after prying off metal bars and chanting in the corridors. Emergency service said at least 8 people were taken to hospital. Isku Kalilia, an opposition leader and former deputy prosecutor general, said that the parliament building was under control of the protesters. Russia... Sorry, one second. Just need to delete something. We will now seek the resignation of the current president of Abkhazia. He was quoted by Russian Interfax news agency as saying. Protesters also broke into the presidential administration's offices located in the same building as the parliament. Wow. The presidential administration said in a statement that authorities were prepared to withdraw the investment agreement with Russia, that some access fear will price them out of the property market. Abkhazia is a popular tourist destination for Russians. Most of Abkhazia broke away from Georgia in fighting that ended in 1993, and Georgia lost control of the rest of the territory in a short war with Russia in 2008. While most countries recognize Abkhazia as part of Georgia, Russia recognized Abkhazia as independent. However, many Abkhazians are concerned that the region of about 245,000 people is a client state of Moscow. So Russia considers it considers the state an independent one. Georgia considers it part of them. The interpretation that's been made here is that they fear that this decision, if they were to go with this decision, would be that obviously Russians would start buying up the homes and lands, pushing them out of the area slowly. And I think that's what they're fear of, or they're fearful that it would be wielded back into Russia's hands over time, rather than independent. So this is them basically saying, while they welcome tourists to the area, what they don't want is them literally moving in the area. And they think the bill there was going to put their own people at risk in the area. On Friday, Abkhazian lawmakers have set out to vote on the ratification of an investment agreement signed in October in Moscow by Russian Economic Minister Maxim Reganelite and his Abkhazian counterpart Kristina Ogsen. As a recent opposition leader said, the agreement with Moscow would allow for investment projects by Russian legal entities, would price locals out of the property market by allowing far more Russian money to flow in. The opposition said in a statement that the protesters' actions were not against the Russian-Abkhazia relations. Yeah, this is. Yeah, I agree with this. It's not about It's not about It's not that they have an issue with Russians. What they don't want is to be pushed out of their own lands. Possibility of the properties. This is what they're concerned about. They don't have a problem with Russians, but what they don't want is being pushed out of it. Abkhazian society had only one demand: to protect the interests of our citizens and our businesses. But neither the president nor the parliament have heard the voice of the people until today. Interfax cited the statement as saying, earlier this week, Abkhazia's self-styled president Azim Barzela held an emergency Security Council meeting after protesters blocked the key highway and rallied in central Sudan to demand the release of 4 activists. The activists, who were subsequently freed, had been detained for opposing the passage of the law regulating the construction industry, which referenced the Russian-Abkhazian agreement. In 2014, demonstrators stormed the presidential headquarters, forcing the then leader Alexander Abib to flee. He later resigned over accusations of corruption and misuse. Opposition leader Raul Kamalizia, elected following the unrest in 2014, was himself forced to step down in 2020 after strict protests against disputed election results. We know obviously that there was obviously the enactment of the Russian law that was imposed this year as well as the government, the Dream Party, I believe it is, who are looking to take away the rights of or pull away rights of LGBTQ plus people in the country as well. It's not very good. They're unlike Moldova, obviously, that they wanted to closer ties with the EU, the public, and its president, but the current party in ruling, and there may have been some electoral interference. They're looking to pull closer ties and relationship with Russia. And you can see that here, even on a regional level, as this story here, showing that, trying to be a bit sneaky about it. And as I said, the people there don't hate Russians. They don't hate Russia. What they don't want is they just want to be able to decide what to do with their, they want to be able to live their own lands and protect their own rights. That's all it is. It's not that they have a legitimacy against Russian government or its people or whatever. I don't think that's the premise. I just think that they feel that's the interpretation that I have from this story. But it is an interesting one, to say the least. As is this other interesting one regarding Russia as well. This exclusive from Bloomberg that dropped yesterday. That's Friday for those reference. So Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, and Olaf Scholz, the German chancellor, hold the first direct calls in almost 2 years. So let's have a little gander. What was this all about? So Russian President Vladimir Putin and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz held a phone call on Friday to discuss ways to end the war in Ukraine, according to a person familiar with the matter who spoke on the condition of autonomy. The call, the first direct communication between the leaders in almost 2 years, comes at a crucial time for Ukraine as the war-battered nation braces for a third full winter under attack from Russia, with large parts of the country's energy infrastructure damaged or destroyed. Uncertainty over support from Western allies has also been growing ahead of Donald Trump's return to the White House next year. Germany is Ukraine's biggest supporter after the US has pledged billions of euros in additional aid. Now, just for context for those who don't know, because I think this is really important to add, obviously Germany relied a lot on Russian gas. They were very reliant on Russian energy. Then when the war in Ukraine started, obviously it has suffered. Germany has suffered. Its economy has suffered ever since, and they've been looking to obviously get other ways of getting the gas that they need. Now the rest of the EU has been helping out, and they've been looking at other means and supplies of getting gas. But eventually, I believe Germany will get back on its feet. Germany was a lot closer to Russia before. Germany and France were actually pretty okay with Russia, but I would say before it really kicked off, because there were conversations and talks between them, but then Putin just decided just to go in and kind of just smash everything up really. But yeah, Germany has since then has kind of had to keep step back really. But still, before he was German Chancellor, Vladimir Putin left and allowed Scholz in Moscow in February 2022. So they have had conversations before. Scholz this year signalled his readiness to make direct contact with Putin for the first time since December 2022, potentially ahead of the Groups of 20 Leader Summit in Brazil, but he stressed that he would liaison closely with the US and European allies ahead of any such phone calls. The German leader, who travelled to G20 gathering in Rio de Janeiro last Sunday, is hobbled with politically after his coalition government collapsed this month, amid a rift with junior coalition partner Scholz Social Democrats, which are trailing in polls against Germany's Conservatives, securing a deal this week to hold a snap election on the 23rd of February. Yeah, it's I think I covered that on the Snowflakes Corner, this snap election. Interesting situation that they are, yeah. In an address to Parliament on Wednesday, Scholz assured lawmakers that his outgoing administration would stand by its commitment to Ukraine, even as he stood by his rejection of delivering long-range weapons such as the Taurus cruise missile, a decision that has been criticised by other allies of Ukraine. The Chancellor spoke on the phone with Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky the same day, pledging steadfast solidarity with Kiev to discuss possible paths to a just peace, Scholz spokesperson said. But direct contact with the Russian leader is a sensitive issue within the European Union, with several governments derailing any overture attempts with Putin as useless. French President Emmanuel Macron's efforts to maintain an open line with the Kremlin in the first months of the full war fell flat and irate Kiev. One European government official derided Scholz's move as a useless exercise, while an official form another government said the Chancellor is acting from a position of weakness, but suggested he would be better off dealing with his domestic trivials. Both spoke on conditional autonomously. Some European officials, meanwhile, have been making large appeals to the outgoing Biden administration to shore up Kiev's position before the presidential term ends in January. Trump will take office on January the 20th, and he said, I need to make a note of that. I don't know why I didn't know it was. I didn't have the exact date, but I need to mark that date. He said he seeks a quick deal between Kiev and Moscow, raising concerns in Europe that such an accord would be disadvantageous to Ukraine and possibly entrench gains made by Russia since it invaded in 2022. The Europeans are asking the US to provide Ukrainians with more weapons and artillery, impose additional sanctions on key Russian revenue streams, and target Moscow's ability to acquire banned technology used in weapons. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken made a hastily arranged trip to Brussels on Wednesday to reassure NATO and European allies, EU allies, that the US will intensify its efforts to send resources to Ukraine ahead of the inauguration of Trump. He will strongly criticize the state of US efforts to defend Kiev. Yeah, Blinken, I don't think you speak on behalf of Republicans, and you should shut the F up, because you've been running back and forth between yourself and Israel like 20 times. Like, have you really made any effort? I'm not taking that man seriously. The resources he mentioned, money, ammunition, weapons, mainly come from a $61 billion package passed by US Congress earlier this year. He added that every dollar out of disposal will be rushed through. Very interesting that they had a direct phone call, and he literally on the same day, according to this, obviously had one with Zelensky as well. That's very interesting. But yeah, but he's got his hands full right now with a staff election in February, so might want to focus on that. It will be interesting to see what the outcome of that election will be. obviously, Germany's support for Ukraine may change after that election. It's entirely possible. We'll have to wait and see. But it is interesting that they had a conversation in the first place. I'm not taking anything that Blinken says seriously at this point because he's on his way out anyway. So America's support for Ukraine will be questionable going forward. That is the ultimate reality because they've made it. Most Republicans have made it clear that they don't want to throw all weapons and support for them. So we'll have to wait and see, obviously. But interesting to say the least. But it's not confirmed that they had a conversation, but it's interesting that they may have had one. And I don't think Bloomberg would have put that story out if they weren't pretty sure of their source. But they said citing an anonymous source, so it's possibly from one, maybe two people potentially. We'll have to see. So this last one I've got for you guys is from Open Democracy. The EU migration strategy treat migrants like the mafia. Deploying anti-mafia tactics against migrants and those standing in solidarity with them is solving nothing. So how has the migration strategy been for the European Union? Is what they're doing working? Is it really making a difference? Is it satisfying the nations within the European Union when it comes to immigration, when it comes to migration? I would say no. Have they been trying to make efforts to show that they do care about it? Yes, I do think they have. Have they done enough? No. One of my biggest gripes, and I've said this in regards to the UK's immigration issue, and you can apply this again, you can apply the same concept to the EU. Unless you're willing to help out the nations of where they come from, whether it's from the Middle East, whether it's from Africa, whether it's from Myanmar, wherever, South America, wherever parts of the world that they come from, unless you're willing to help these nations out, help them on their feet, help them ensure that they have the farms to grow their crops, the water to drink, the schools to learn, the homes to live in, all these things, unless you're willing to help these governments and leaders and nations on their feet. And it's not just a case of putting money in, it's about putting bodies in, it's about being committed to it on an international scale, but in this case, in a European scale, you will always have migration coming to your country, but you can reduce it if you make the effort to do so. You know, we have a huge influx of Sudanese fleeing the country. You have many Palestinians fleeing the Middle East right now because there's so many conflicts taking place in the Middle East. There's civil wars in Syria, in Iraq. You have all that going on. So people are fleeing those countries because of despondent, because of what they're going through. You have what's happening in different countries in Africa that are still having conflicts. Like Somalia is not exactly the safest one. There's still people fleeing that country. You have obviously even in South America, things are not, you had people fleeing Venezuela, because of the Morado obviously keeping his position as despite the fact that he may have rigged the election there. Many Venezuelans fled the country. Then you have obviously what's happening in Myanmar. Many people who have fled that country, while some have stood and fight, some have fled to China, some fled to other Asian countries, or some have come all the way across over to Europe because they probably see maybe an opportunity there. There is all sorts, and while I'm not talking specifically about wars here, that are conflicts, there is also the impact of climate change that is also going to be playing effect on this as well. If you don't deal with these issues of the helping these nations, you cannot complain about the influx that's come in. If you want to reduce migration, you have to help. You have to go for the source. It's all well and good pulling up walls and barriers, but they're still going to be there. And this has always been the position that I believe in. So let's read into this. So, in November 2023, Italy's Prime Minister Giorgio Meloni gathered the country's top prosecutors and headquarters of the powerful anti-mafia and anti-terrorism directorate, the DNAA. The far-right leader flattered them, boasting about the Italian's jurisdiction global prestige. Italy used to export mafia, she said. Now it exports anti-mafia. She was trying to smooth over tensions over her government's plans to limit the powers of organised crime investigators. Yet there was more to Meloni's statement than she perhaps realised. Over the past decade, the DNA shifted focus from fighting Italy's mafia to tackling undocumented migration. The directorate became central to Europe's response, a hub for national police forces and European agencies like Frontex and Europol to exchange and refine anti-migration tactics. The DNAA's success well laid in its apparent ability to throw investigative findings behind the idea that politicians were keen to believe that undocumented migration is essentially a matter of organised crime and should be dealt with as such. A prosecutor in Palermo branded this approach the Italian job, but Italy wasn't alone in its efforts. In recent years, many European border countries have seen an explosion of court cases against people thought to facilitate migration in some way. Driving a dinghy, providing shelter or medical assistance, or even receiving a distress call from a sinking boat is now enough to make someone vulnerable to prosecution. Migrants, as always, have been the main targets, but prosecutors have also set their sights on European activists and aid workers in what can be described as a campaign to criminalise solidarity. So basically, people who and organisations who save lives, who could go out of their way to save these people's lives, could become prosecuted for doing the right thing, for doing the humane thing. Since 2013, this traditional policy has been turbocharged with unprecedented funding, but its roots stretch back over 2 decades. The technical and legal groundwork was laid after the fall of the Soviet Union and reinforced following the September 11, 2001 attacks in the United States, an inflection point that saw the migration become ever more intertwined with security concern. Policy has run long enough to be assessed, and at least for a practical level has been a complete failure. Criminal smuggling scholars agree with large heretical smuggling rings are rare. Their contribution to migration flow is insignificant. The vast majority of migration facilitation comes from loose chains of actors who do not share a common employer. A migrant finds somebody who can help with a step or two and then finds someone new to help with the next step, building out of his chain as they go along. What said smuggling facilitators of all kinds are more likely to be active whenever broader or particular restrictions. European prosecutors ignored those inconvenient truths about migration, but that doesn't change the result. Smuggling kingpins are not ending up in the dock, and the people who do are rarely worth judges' time. Substantial academics and journalistic research shows that European smuggling cases and predominantly target innocent asylum seekers, and legal actions against European activists, whether in Italy, Greece, Spain or France, have almost collapsed in court, though not without first causing significant harm to those involved. The failure of this policy is not lost on its proponents. They are well aware of the reports confirming these findings. So when it comes to reducing the number of undocumented arrivals, politicians resort to much cruder methods. But the formalities of court procedures, such as so-called border extensional policies. These are bilateral agreements between European states and various foreign entities in what Europe labels transit countries, government, militias, autocrat rulers, law enforcement bodies, security service. They typically include provisions for military equipment, technology, training, political support, and FAT contracts for European and local companies and aid agencies. In return, benefactors commit to intercepting, incarcerating, or taking back undesired migrants. European governments use to conceal these deals, with investigative journalists scramble to dig them up, but they are now official policy, having shown some effectiveness in curbing migration flows, at least along specific routes and long enough to scrape through an election year. So if the campaign against migration and solidarity offers at best the short-term dip in movement and in some places no real long-term results, why is it pursued in such favour? Authorities claim it's about justice. Smugglers export migrants in distress for profit, and migrants infringe on the country's sovereignty by entering without permission, both of which are morally unacceptable. They just can't let it slide. Campaigners take a different view. Criminalisation, they argue, serve as a political tool to deflect blame from the real culprits of migrants suffering. Tens of thousands have died in Europe's borders over the last 2 decades, said Sarah Taylor, an activist in Palermo. Policymakers push the false narrative that pushing facilitators of cross-border crossings will solve this crisis. But these deaths stem directly from Europe's closed doors and neocolonial policies. Treaders call for From Sea to Prison, a report tracking the arrest of individuals accused of being crew on small dinghies arriving in Italy. Her group in Palermo is part of a broader European captain support network, a coalition of grassroots organisations providing information and legal support to those accused of maritime smuggling. Since 2013, nearly 3,000 people have been arrested in Italy alone, she said. Thousands more have faced similar fates in Greece and Spain. The UK and France have also stepped up prosecutions for those attempting to cross the channel. The Captain Support Network often highlights blatant miscarriages of justice. Their Free the Footballers campaign seeks to exonerate 8 asylum seekers from Libya, Tunisia, Syria and Morocco, serving 30-year sentences in Italy. Including among them are professional football players, arrested in 2015 and accused by the DNAA branch in Catalina of steering a dinghy where 49 people suffocated. They were identified by witnesses who received resistant permits for their cooperation. Initial testimonies had denied the presence of smugglers. In court, it emerged that suspects were pre-selected based on their appearance of a military rescue boat. Frontex officers found them suspicious due to their clothes, and they had stood out to the Italian police on board because of their lighter skin. Witness statements collected by the police were nearly identical, with entire sections copied and pasted, and were largely redacted in court. Interpreters often didn't speak the right languages. Yet, despite evidence that at least 5 were paying passengers, their sentences were upheld. A final ruling this April said only a presidential pardon could address the disparities between the sentence and the more dimensions of the actual incumbency. According to Travia, this case is not extreme. Not extreme. Police interrogations after traumatic crossings, manipulating witness statements, lack of interpreters, inadequate legal defense, and use of intimidation and inappropriate incentives to secure cooperation and recurrent in smuggling in cases. So basically, to force them into a plea deal or guilty claim, even though they're not guilty of anything. Trella didn't claim that everyone helped the Captain's Support Network is innocent in a legal sense. A few may have acted for profit, but avoided profit motives doesn't prevent convictions. Criminalized individuals come from diverse backgrounds and motivations, she said. The uncommon factor is that they're accused of helping someone to cross a border. The term captains restores agencies on those on the move, who often don't see smugglers as morally reprehensible, she said. Sometimes boat drivers are even celebrated as heroes. The views Trella holds today are considered fringe. They were once mainstream. In 1980, the highest criminal court in Germany held a peculiar smuggling case. The smuggler was the plaintiff and was referred to as an escape helper. He had sued a refugee for unpaid fees after a failed attempt to transport him from east to west Germany. And the court ruled the fees must be paid with interest, stating the refugee had made use of his fundamental right to freedom of movement, and that helping someone exercise this right, even for profit, does not, in principle, act contrary to morality. The court backed the Berlin Senate's view that smuggling becomes criminal only when capitalizing on the personal distress of others turns into a permanent source of considerable income. Since then, the notion of what warrant criminals' punishment has stretched to absurd extremists. It now includes everything from walking up to a border unaided to being related to someone crossing illegally, or even posting on social media about wanting to cross. Wow. So you could even say it on social media and you could be arrested. In June 2022, 23 migrants were killed in clashes with Spain and Moroccan security forces while trying to enter Spanish enclave of Melilla. The victims have reached out the border on foot. Pedro Sanchez, the Spanish Prime Minister, blamed human trafficking mafias for the tragedy. Later that year, Tunisian mothers protesting the mass drowning of migrants were met with a shocking response. Vincent Cosio, a special envoy for the UN Refugee Agency, the UNHCR, suggested symbolically prosecuting parents for putting their children at risk. That's a UNHCR refugee agency. Blamed the mothers for putting their children at risk, for saying you should have it's your fault for letting the children go. Just weeks ago, the Moroccan government, eager to appease Spain in extra-nationalist talks, arrested 60 teenagers for social media posts about swimming to Cilia, a Spanish town on the North African coast. They even placed barriers to prevent access to the sea in the towns near the enclave. Wow. This massive shift in perceptions is often transferred to the post-Soviet era. Refugees from Eastern blocs poured into Western Europe, once seen as freedom seekers, transformed to undesirable economic threats. In this period, European countries tightened asylum and visa laws, forcing refugees into illegal routes. By the late 1990s, an influx of mostly Kurdish refugees from Iraq raised alarms in Germany, where politicians started to speak of illegal immigration organised by criminal gangs and pressured coastal states, like Italy and Greece, for tougher action against smugglers. Around the same time, Italy had began prosecuting Kurds arriving by boat, and in the UK, a report from the late 1990s found that courts were in coastal towns were seeing 2 or 3 trials of facilitating illegal entry every week, with sentencing ranging from 1 to 3 years. This process accelerated dramatically after the September 11th, 2001 attacks. In Western political discourse, migrants became increasingly associated with security threats and terrorism, but political rhetoric alone doesn't explain these changes. In this sentimental study of the subject, the politics of insecurity, fear, migration, and asylum in the EU, French sociologist Jeff Huntsman argued that security agencies played a pivotal role in constructing migration as a criminal threat. Political visions, he noted, relied on invoking fears and emergencies while offering credible methods to control these insecurities. Security agencies then stepped in, used these expertise to provide compelling solutions to its problems politicians present. Italy's DNAA proved to be the master in this game. And on the 3rd of October 2013, over 360 people, mostly from Eritrea and Somalia, drowned off the coast of Lampedusa. I remember this story. Authorities ignored their overlooked boat for hours until a passenger lit a makeshift torch that sparked a fire, capsizing the vessel. Days later, in an official resolution, EU leaders declared that the tragedy has shocked all Europeans, and to avoid more deaths, they pledged to step up the fight against trafficking and smuggling. Yeah, because it's their fault that their countries are doing terrible. DNA prosecutors were already at work to make that happen. The previous day, they had met in Rome for the first in a series of coordinated meetings to fight maritime illegal immigration. These meetings came to be attended by Frontex, Europol, and Eurojust representatives alongside Italian law enforcement. The DNA levered the credibility it had gained from decriminalizing Costa Nostra to assess its ability to tackle this new security threat. That anti-mafia prosecution could claim jurisdiction over undocumented migration, though wasn't a given. Before 2013, DNA remit was limited to trafficking where people are forced across borders for exploration. Often through organized network smuggling, however, involves voluntary crossing and is an offense against border laws, not people. The Lampedusa disaster blurred this line. The journey was so deadly it seemed no one would take it willingly. With the public still emotional and desperate for solutions, the DNAA made the most of this confusion. After the first meeting, the agency published guidelines expanding Italy's jurisdiction into international waters for anti-smuggling operations by invoking laws ranging from the slave trade era to the American war on drugs. They frame migration as part of a broader criminal continuum. These guidelines reference provisions of the 1958 Geneva Convention allowing high-speed police operations against slave trade and piracy. The 2022 EU Facilitators package that criminalizes aiding undocumented entry and stay. Even the Reganelite Maritime Drug Law Enforcement Act. Subsequent governments codified the DNAA's expanded role after the 2015 Paris attack. The agency was granted the anti-terrorism mandate thanks to the work we did in 2013, said Francesco Robaldi. Then DNAA chief. 2 years later, it was assisted migrant smuggling. With the traditional groundwork in place, the DNAA moved on to securing arrests. Working with police and European natives, they formalized the investigation network's methods at work in the case of the Libyan football players. Law enforcement handbooks advise identity smugglers based on details like clothing and attitude towards the police. They also said investigators exploit the emotionally changed moments after a rescue, targeting the weakest subjects for information and witness statements against boat drivers. Because civil rescue ships operate by NGOs interfering with this activity, in a 27 coordination meeting attended by EU law enforcement with the DNA's top brass discussed charging them with aiding and abetting smuggling. The arrests made, though, these methods led to outlandish stories eagerly reported by the media, smuggling, branding migrants' heads with knives, boat drivers tossing a toddler overboard to hinder rescue efforts to their own sinking boat. The human rights activists made the under-the-table deals with traffickers. Though debunked in court, these accounts make lasting impressions on the public. And because they target people arriving in Italy on dinghies, Those arrested weren't even smugglers or traffickers. This is so fucked up. The only high-profile target of the DNAA was the alleged trafficking kingpin, Mujahideen Yagihol Merrick, an Eritrean accused of organising numerous sea journeys from Libya. The investigation and collaboration between the DNA and the UK's National Crime Agency culminated in a dramatic press conference announced Mujahideen's arrest in Sudan. However, it soon emerged that the man flowed from Palmyra to Khartoum on a military jet was actually Mujahideen's, I don't know what that means, Tesfalian Bahrain, a carpenter from Asmiya. Prosecutors held him in prison for 3 years before partly admitting the mistake. Cordelia Falia, the DNAA prosecutor behind the case and the proponent of the Italian job approach, responded by wiretapping Guardian journalist Lorenzo Tolo, who exposes the error, and later sued him for libel. He recently called to strengthen international legislation against migrant smuggling. In a 2022 interview, even Francesco Robli, a former DNAA boss, recognized the anti-migration strategy put in place after the Lampedusa shipwreck was a failure. But he attributed to a lack of cooperation from a foreign police rather than any consensual shortcomings. Lessons were not learned. And after yet another shipwreck killed at least 94 people 150 meters from the Italian shore in February last year, Giorgia Meloni's government doubled down once again. This time it established unprecedented high prison terms for those convicted of smuggling. Last January, she asked the DNAA to start investigating regular migration flows for potential document fraud as well. And Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, originally visited Italy to learn more about the Italian model of combating irregular migration. Now, at a joint press conference, Mehdi said that she and Starmer had agreed for the first thing to do is to step up the fight against human trafficking beings. She emphasised that Italy's strategy was inspired by Governor Falcone, the judge murdered by Silicon Mafia in 1992, shortly after founding the DNAA, calling for a stronger role in Interpol and Europol in anti-smuggling efforts. Starmer concurred, spelled out the goal for his Italy trip to share intelligence, share tactics, shut down smugglers' routes, and smash the gangs. And around we go. I know that was a lot, guys, to take in, but it is quite a network. And this intention of just not... For me, the thing that sticks out to me the most there is how much they will not... Like, they will try as hard as they possibly can not to pick them up. And if they have absolutely no choice but to pick them up, to treat them all like criminals. In any way, shape or form that they can treat them like criminals, they do so. The main, like, yes, migration has always been an issue. But it's been exacerbated as a weapon to use to rile up hatred and anger among people. It's been weaponized. We know migration's been weaponized. It's been weaponized more than ever before. But I've always said that the solution has always been to, if you want to reduce migration globally, you have to fix the homes that they come from. If you don't fix the homes they come from, they're going to keep coming. And shutting up doors is not going to fix that solution. And people think that all their solutions is just by kicking them out. That was a lot to process, guys. That was a lot to process. But just before we head out, after that excruciating story, piece from Open Democracy, I have one last video for you guys before we head out. I have played this. You guys have probably not heard this one heard this one, but it is one from Michael Spicer. Here playing as a Labour minister being questioned about historical Trump tweets. So I hope you guys enjoy this funny video before we head out, guys, from this.
Minister, Donald Trump is president-elect once again. What are your thoughts on his emphatic win?
Well, look, obviously, I congratulate Donald Trump on his victory, and I look forward to working with his administration over the next 4 years.
You've got some bridges to build with him, though, haven't you? Given that in January 2017, you said, Donald Trump is a neo-Nazi and a disgusting sexual predator. God help the United States.
The Prime Minister and I have already had several meetings with President Trump in order to maintain a healthy relationship that benefits both countries, and I think that's what's important right now.
When you met the President, did he mention this tweet you wrote back in March 2017 when you said, "How can anyone spend time with Donald Trump and not come to the conclusion that he's an unscrupulous, egotistical, misogynistic fascist? God, I hate him."
What I'm focused on is making sure that our strong working relationship with the United States continues under President Trump and his team.
Even though you said this in July 2017, Donald Trump is contemptible, vile and odious, a tornado of corruption and depravity in a flappy blue suit. He makes me sick.
Donald Trump is a man who speaks as he finds, but I think that it's important that we find some common ground in the national interest, and that's what myself and the Prime Minister are focused on doing in the coming months.
So presumably you no longer think what you tweeted in December 2017 when you said, anyone who tries to forge working relationships with Trump is an unprincipled, morally bankrupt charlatan who should be treated with contempt and total disdain. I don't care who you are, if you want to work with that fascist monster, you're a piece of shit.
The transatlantic relationship is one of the most important relationships that the UK has, and I don't think that bringing up tweets that I posted several years ago should have any bearing on what we're trying to achieve today.
Even though you said in January 2018,
Oh, God.
don't ever forget these things I'm saying about Donald Trump. Seriously, if you find me reeling off some spurious bullshit in years to come about looking forward to working with Donald Trump because he's been re-elected, God forbid, then take it as read that I've sold my soul for the sake of my political career and should be kicked in the face for the rest of my life by the people who voted for me.
So much has changed in 8 years, and I think that it's incumbent upon us to extend the hand of friendship to President Trump for the sake of national and financial security.
Okay, if that's the case, perhaps you should also change your profile photo.
Oh, shit.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, he did that. Oh, dear, oh, dear. He didn't really think about that, did he? Guys, check out Michael Spicer's YouTube channel. Link for it will be down below. He does every now and then. He'll have some really good ones. There are some ones I don't find. There's some long formatting ones, but every now and then when he does like a political video like this, it's really, really good. So do check out his stuff. Do consider subscribing and liking and all that stuff as well, guys. So what did you guys think of the? What did you guys think? Ollie turns off. Ollie has done it again. He's turned off the orb. So there's the gang behind me, guys. Like I said earlier, they're all here. They're all here. So, like I said earlier, I hope you guys they are always here, always lurking in the premiere videos and live streams. So, guys, we come to the end of World Newsround. What did you make of all the stories we covered today? We covering from Pete Hegseth, who is who has links to possibly to being a white supremacist, who could be in charge of some parts of the military with the US. Muslims who voted for Trump, who are upset by his pro-Israel cabinet picks. French weapons systems found in Sudan is likely a violation of UN arms embargo. The protesters storming parliament in a breakaway Georgian region. Vladimir Putin and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz having a direct phone call. And finally, the last one on EU migration strategy is been treating migrants like the mafia. Let me know your thoughts and more on all these stories down in the comments section below. But just before I go, if you haven't already, please hit the like button. It'd be greatly appreciated. Share this across social media so others are notified of this video. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing because it really does help support the channel. If you want to go one step further, financially support me and the work that I do here, you could do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p. Or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.